Hello. Today we're going to look at the local history preservation efforts by Amelia Island. Amelia Island is located on the northern part of Florida along the border with Georgia on the St. Mary's River. Today I'm located at Fort Clinch. Fort Clinch is a state park and it's home to a 200-year-old fort that was started before the Civil War and finished during the Civil War and has been preserved for people to look at today. The history of Amelia Island is long and rich. It stretches far back to the Native Americans, where prior to colonization, Native Americans used the island and had settlements and local communities that utilized the river for trade and as a resource. The Spanish would later colonize it, and they would establish a settlement, which is along the riverside opposite of the coast, the Atlantic coast. Amelia Island is known as the Isle of Eight Flags because it had 8 flags during the course of its history that have flown over it. Okay, first it was the French flag at one point as the Huguenots tried to establish a colony for Protestants, and then Spain had their flag fly over the island at 2 different periods. The first from 1565 and then to 1763. And that is when Great Britain took hold of it in 1763 after the 7 Years' War, and they controlled it till 1783 after the American Revolution. After the American Revolution, the Spanish regained control of Florida, where this was part of what was East Florida, as the British had divided it. And located on the island, there is the original plot of land designated to the Fernandez land grant by the Spanish. And on that land grant, they still have their family plot that is preserved today, located between the Catholic Church and a Catholic school. The Catholic school used to be at one point a convent and was even a hospital of sorts to treat yellow fever epidemics. Today it is operating as a school, and the church is still in use. But this stretches back the Catholic connections stretch all the way back to the Spanish colonial period prior to the English in 1763. As the Spanish were deemed seemed to have a weak administration hold on the area. This happened including in 1812, where patriots from Georgia had had taken over the island for a brief period of time. In 1817, a Scottish revolutionary tied to Simon Bolivar in South America named Gregor MacGregor. Gregor took over the island, Amelia Island, and he flew a Green Cross of Florida over as he took control. The pirate Henri, a Frenchman, had traveled actually from Texas, where he was tied to the Mexican revolutionaries, and decided to take over Amelia Island as a way to hopefully barter a way to get funds for the Mexican Revolution. During that time, he even had captured slaves and sold them on the island, and to this day, there still is a rumor that his pirate fortune is somewhere buried on the island. In 1821, and then the United States controlled it obviously till to this day, with a brief period interrupted in the Civil War where the Confederate States of America controlled the island. Due to its long history, the island has an immense amount of history that still is around to this day. Where I'm standing today is Fort Clinch. Fort Clinch was a fort that was started prior to the Civil War, and you can see where they had started, where there's older bricks. They are larger and more faded, and you can see where the newer bricks were added during the course of the Civil War. So Fort Clinch, construction began in 1847. There was an effort there had been efforts before that to try to make sure they protect the St. Mary's waterway that separated Georgia and Florida, because so many other countries and obvious pirates and other parties had been interested in this area for such a long period of time. In 1847, they started construction, but it wouldn't be finished until during the Civil War, when after the Confederates had left, the Union took control, and the Union Army was able to with engineers able to complete the fort. The fort is in the shape of a pentagon. It has large, it had guns that would overlook the river, protecting what is now called Old Town and what is known as Fernandina Beach. Although the Confederates occupied it at one point, they abandoned it, and that's when the Union took control and finished it. So there was no conflict here at Fort Clinch. But during this time, if you look in the graveyard, you'll find different gravestones connected to the Pennsylvania infantry as they were stationed here, because there was still yellow fever and other diseases that could afflict the soldiers as they were stationed here. The Fort Clinch would largely not be used again until the Spanish-American War in 1898, where it was used as an ammo depot and barracks. The fort was then largely abandoned, and then it was changed to private hands in the 1920s, who had purchased it. However, nothing really came of it. In 1930s, with the New Deal, the CCC was able to restore much of the fort for use, and during World War II, it was used by the Coast Guard in close association with the military and Navy as a surveillance and joint operations center. Later on, the state of Florida actually purchased it, and that is what it is today. Today, Fort Clinch is a state park, this is an excellent example of local preservation, as Fort Clinch is very much tied with the identity of Amelia Island, and it is used today as not only as a park where tourists can go hiking, fishing, boating, camping, with an entrance fee. They can also pay to enter into the Fort Clinch itself. On the first weekend of each month, the fort will actually, after they pay the $2.50 admission fee, visitors can see demonstrations of reenactors at the fort with weapons, and they usually have someone dressed as a Union soldier reenacting parts and answering questions as they attempt to get visitors to get a feel for what it might be like to be a soldier stationed here in 1860s. Today, visitors can still visit Fort Clinch, where it is an area to freely walk around and look at how soldiers lived in the 1860s within the fort's walls. Right now, I'm located in a kitchen area, or mess hall area, where food would have been prepared and served to soldiers at various points during its occupation. Walking around Fort Clinch, you will see it is obviously a brick fort. Brick was chosen as it was easily acquired, relatively, and they could fashion it to the shape that they wanted. They especially like to use it for the vaulted ceilings, as you can see throughout the structure. I'm right now currently in a perimeter room with a casemate where they store gunpowder and things, and you can still see where they could have where they had weapons and stuff utilized on the perimeter wall. Preservation efforts still continue at Fort Clinch today as construction continues to maintain the buildings, and efforts to continue use this fort as a teaching tool to teach visitors about the time period in Florida's history. Elsewhere around Amelia Island, you will find a lighthouse, which is located in a neighborhood on the highest point of the island. It was actually erected prior to 1821 on Cumberland Island across the river in Georgia. But changes in the waterway made it real ineffective, so they actually in 1838 dismantled the lighthouse and brought it to Amelia Island. It was first used with 14 oil lamps, which the lighthouse attendant had to bring up the flight of stairs to the top. And there it used a distinct flashing points to guide ships away from the shore and direct them into the St. Mary's Channel. It was replaced in 1903 with a different system, and it's been automated with electricity since 1930. Today, it is maintained by the Coast Guard and is open on Saturdays for visitors, and you have to schedule tours as well. Today, there is actually a museum and a historical society that operate on the island that continue to preserve history for this area. The museum is actually located in the old county jail, where the museum continues to operate and attract tourists today. In addition to that, there is the Historical Society continues to organize and acquire sources of material during this long, over 200-year history.